Of the metalcore bands that don't come from the US or UK, Japan's Crystal Lake has had name value with metal fans for over a decade, especially on the other side of the world. Even though Crystal Lake has gone through several key band member changes, the machine kept rolling and we now have the band's 5th full album, Helix. Crystal Lake has been a band I've known about for a while, but I'd never really dove into their music over the years. When I got word about the new album and someone brought it up as a suggestion in a rock coliseum, my interest peaked and I wanted to give the band a shot. Japan has a loud metal scene now, and I'm more than up for checking what good can come from the land of the rising sun. I've been critical of many rock and metal bands using electronic elements and relying on studio over-mixing for a couple years now, but every now and then you get a band who tries it to add to their style as opposed to replacing their sound. I can honestly say that Crystal Lake in 2019 is able to make that work with this new album. That being said, metalcore is a style that isn't as strong as it was 10 years ago. It's starting to be lost in the mix of the dozens of other subgenreized rock and metal types. Crystal Lake is holding to their guns in Helix, even if they are working with additional mixing and electronic elements. I would much rather have that than a band going overboard and relying on mixing software than their own instruments. As Helix starts, after an ominous opening intro track, you are blown away with two killer back-to-back songs in Aeon and Agony. This is how you kick the door down when starting an album. It's heavy, loud, rhythmic, and feels special. Aeon especially has a lot going on in just under 3 minutes with several speed changes and many elements. Songs like Aeon and Agony hybrid metal, hardcore, and electronic effects wonderfully to create a complete song. There is a lot going on, but it's not overwhelming. There are lyric hooks like the breathe in, breathe out in Agony, and the guitar riffs add a strong dynamic when on the high fret when paired with the low end. And that's where the real highlights end. And it's unfortunate because this album starts out with such promise but really tapers off after only 3 tracks. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wretched or empty here, but the music is just okay. It's serviceable. But when you hear how good this album opens and then continue on, you are left wanting so much more. When the hardcore element starts showing up a bit more in songs like Plus 81 and Lost in Forever, it becomes a very similar sounding ride. Not bad, but nothing exciting or nearly as engaging as the first few songs on Helix. Outgrow has a bit of a slow opening that leads into a good building song, but it also goes back into the same flow. Steady drum beats, chug-along guitar riffs, things we've heard before.
Empty and needed for, in spite of what we were, outgrow what you think you were.
The second half of the album, starting with Ritual that serves as an interlude, makes you feel like something big and important is coming, but it leads to more of the same. Just Confusing is an oddly paced song that doesn't sound like Crystal Lake at all, and the final tracks Apollo and Sanctuary just add more status quo music that leaves an unsatisfying feeling when closing out of everything. It's hard to argue that Helix doesn't sound like Crystal Lake putting in good effort because there is nothing bad here, but it's disappointing because you know that they had the puzzle pieces to put something complete, but there are spots missing. It just doesn't feel whole. There are good sections, but we know it should have been so much more. I wanted to like Helix much more than I actually did, because as strong as Crystal Lake comes out of the gate in the opening of this album, it does not last over 41 minutes. I can hear that Crystal Lake has talent, there's just not enough in this album for me to sink my teeth into. Overall, Helix should satisfy longtime fans and has a few tracks definitely worth checking out, but it may leave many metalcore fans wanting more out of this full album. It definitely has merit and some unique spots worth hearing, but while listening you can't help but shake the feeling of wishing it was just a bit more enjoyable.